No Buzz, I just used book club. I just recorded this one, but I didn't actually hit record. Today, we are talking about. Guess what? Look at it. Look at the form factor. Look at the form factor. That's right. Look at that logo. Transit books, baby. Undelivered lectures. We're back. Today, I'm going to talk about The Wilderness by Ayşegül Savaş. The first undelivered lecture in 2 years, I want to say. The first new one in 2 years. Undelivered lectures are a thing. I think I actually read all of them before this channel started, which is wild. Cause it's been a fucking minute. But it's a series of lectures by Transit Books, a local to me, sort of independent publishing house that primarily does like sort of fiction and translation. Has published a lot of good stuff. Came sort of more to prominence when Jan Fosse won the Nobel a year ago, because they were one of the two major people in the U.S. who had translated him alongside the Dalkey Archive Press, both presses that I quite like, honestly. And unfortunately, I love Fosse, as I may have described here. He's so fucking good, though. Like, Undelivered Lectures was the series that introduced me to Namwali Serpell, I believe. No, not I believe. I know for sure. I just don't remember where I got Stranger Faces from, but they have published Mary Capello, her essay lecture. They have published Joanna Walsh with her My Life as a Godard movie, which I liked well enough. I really loved her novel Vertigo. There's like a 2-hour video of me and another bee talking about it on this thing. Never quite have gotten along with her nonfiction in the same way. And a couple other things. But yeah, it's been a couple years since they put one out. This one just came out. I read it. I'm very excited that like that this little thing is continuing, because yeah, it's Undelivered Lecture started in 2020 as a response to the coronavirus pandemic, and as a way to sort of publish like known-ish authors, like Namwali Serpell had The Old Drift come out in 2019. I read it because I read Stranger Faces and loved it, and then I read The Furrows, which came out in 2022, I want to say, and I think that's a fucking masterpiece of a book. And sort of allow them to publish the lectures that they would have given had there not been massive pandemic whose ongoing effects are still extremely bad, and we're just ignoring them. Maybe. But yeah, I read this one. It's the Wilderness. It is a sort of reconstruction, I guess is the word, of the first 40 days after giving birth, specifically focused on Savaş's own experience, ? We'll get to that in a moment. Coupled with cultural traditions and knowledges and potentially superstitions around, the month and change after giving birth, and how those intersect with her experience, and so on and so forth. I think it's very good. I think it's particularly well written, especially. Kind of just like hopped through it. It's like heavy, but like the prose is like interesting, which is nice in nonfiction, because it's not always. But yeah, I'm just gonna read the very beginning of this book and talk a little bit about what I mean by the prose is interesting. But first, dedication is for my mother, which is important given some of the ways that her mother is portrayed literally in what I'm about to read, but especially throughout the rest of the book. Savaş's mother is portrayed sometimes in a not completely sympathetic light, let's say. But yeah, literal first page of the thing. Just gonna read the whole first page. 1. My mother arrived to Paris from Istanbul the day before I gave birth, but wasn't allowed to visit us at the hospital. Take 2. 1. My mother arrived to Paris from Istanbul the day before I gave birth, but wasn't allowed to visit us at the hospital. She couldn't sleep from excitement. She walked from our apartment to the hospital several times a day, pacing up and down the emergency entrance while I labored for 24 hours. On the day we were discharged, a kind nurse permitted my mother to come up to the room to help us carry our bags. She burst inside and ran toward the baby. What I remember is that she didn't kiss me. She didn't come to her own child first. But in truth, I remember very little. In truth, I have already forgotten everything. So immediately there, setting up a nice little contradiction. What I remember, but I remember very little. In truth, I have already forgotten everything. And I, reading through this, wanted to take that final sentence of the first page on its face, and the first part. In truth, I have already forgotten everything. It really, really fucking animates the prose of this lecture essay thing. Because we could take it a few ways. Right? Like, I've already forgotten everything could be sort of a fuzzy way of saying, like, I am no longer in the same headspace that I was, and I can never really access it again, right? It's like, I've forgotten the lived experience of the thing, even though I remember the details, like that my mother went and kissed the baby first and did not come to her own child. I think that's not it. I think she's more close with her words than that would imply, that she cares more about sentences than that would imply, and I believe that based on the rest of this. I've never written Savash's other fiction. I'm interested in it at this point. I do think, yeah, I mean, between Sir Pell and Joanna Walsh, I have a tendency to really enjoy the fiction of the people who have written for Undelivered Lectures even more than their nonfiction. Although I will say Sir Pell, at some point this year, like a handful of months ago, had maybe more than that handful, had a couple of essays in the New York Review of Books that were both quite good about hit me fiction. But yeah, I think we have to take her at her word that she's forgotten, or she's already forgotten everything. And so that's why I specifically use the word reconstruction of the time, like the 40 days after giving birth, because I think that's the best word I can think of. Because initially, when I fake recorded this on accident, I initially used the word reminisce, but you don't reminisce about things you've forgotten. Well, you can, but that's a different project, I think. And I think keeping that in mind while engaging with this description of what she was going through, how she was feeling, but also the cultural sort of assumptions around this time period and traditional methods of healing versus what was done and all these things, really starts to sing if you keep that in mind, that she's forgotten everything and is trying to reconstruct it. And that's why it's one of my favorite Undelivered Lectures. Yeah. Thanks for not watching.